Welcome, dear friend. Thank you for pressing play. Thank you for showing up, not just to watch, but to witness. This is Diary of Abandoned Souls, a quiet corner of the world where the stories of forgotten dogs are told with love, carefully unwrapped like fragile memories. I'm a groomer, but more than that, I am a listener to trembling bodies, matted fur, and silences so deep they echo through the heart. Through my hands, in our grooming salon, we rescue more than coats. We rescue stories. We uncover lives that once waited in the shadows, longing for someone to see them. This story is one of those. And I'm so glad you're here. He wasn't left in a shelter. He wasn't abandoned by a road. He wasn't even set free. He was tied to a tree in the middle of nowhere. Left. No food, no water, no goodbye. Just a short, rusted chain and a forest that watched and said nothing. If you've never seen a dog try to stay alive in silence, you're about to. If you've never heard the sound of loyalty outliving hope, you will. The people who tied him there didn't scream. They didn't hit. They didn't look back. And that, in many ways, was worse. Because indifference doesn't just break bones. It shatters identity. He didn't even have a name when we found him. Just a pair of eyes, too tired to beg, but too brave to close. He didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't whine. He just stared and waited for pain, for help, for someone to finish what had started. We don't know. All we know is that he held on longer than he should have. We named him Echo because that's what he was, a sound still traveling through empty places long after the voice that created it had gone. In the grooming world, we often talk about transformation. We share before and after photos. We celebrate the shine of clean fur, the joy in wagging tails. But some transformations are quieter, slower, invisible at first glance, like the way a dog starts to breathe differently when he finally believes he will eat again, or the way his eyes soften the first time a hand reaches for him and doesn't hurt. This is his story, told gently, told truly, not to exploit his pain, but to honor the miracle that he is still here. In the next part, you'll hear about the moment he was left, the sound of the car pulling away, the way the woods swallowed him without a whisper. But before that, stay here, in the stillness. Think of every creature who was once called good boy and then forgotten. Think of how much it takes to wait for someone who never returns. And then, thank Echo for surviving long enough to be heard. Because sometimes being found isn't about rescue vans or dramatic music. Sometimes it's about being seen by someone who listens long enough to hear the pain behind the silence. The moment of abandonment. It was quiet. Too quiet The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, but empty. The kind of quiet where things disappear and no one notices. The car turned off the dirt road. Tires cracked over branches. Dust rose behind them, catching in the sunbeams like secrets. He sat in the back seat, panting. Not from fear, yet, just from the heat, the ride. The unfamiliar. His tail wagged once, uncertain. They hadn't spoken to him for most of the drive. No music, no windows down, no good boy, just silence and the smell of change. They pulled into a clearing, a patch of land surrounded by tall trees. No buildings, no people, no sound, except for the insects and the birds, and the pulse in his ears. The man got out first, opened the back door. The dog, still unnamed, stood up, expectant. A walk, a new place to run. He jumped down. The woman came next. She carried something, a rusted chain. No leash, no water, no bag of food, just the chain. They didn't smile, didn't kneel to say goodbye. They didn't say his name because they had already stopped using it. Weeks ago, they led him to a tree. He followed, willingly, because that's what dogs do. They follow, even when it leads to pain, even when it leads to being forgotten. The chain was short. It clicked around his neck. Cold, final. He sat, looked up, tail tapping the dirt, waiting for the next step. But there wasn't one. The man turned. The woman looked at the ground. They walked back to the car, didn't run, didn't rush. The trunk closed. The engine started. The dust lifted again. And just like that, they were gone. No yelling, no fight, no drama, just absence. He stood there, the chain tight against his chest. Ears forward, head tilted. He listened. He waited. He believed they were coming back. Of course they were. They forgot something. They were checking something. They needed to move the car. They were just testing him. They would come back. They had to. He barked once, a soft sound, hopeful. He barked again, louder, uncertain. Then again, panic now. He pulled at the chain. It held. He whined, spun in a tight circle, sat, waited. The hours passed. The light shifted. The birds changed song. No one came. He lay down, then stood, then lay down again and again, like pressing rewind on a question that never gets answered. The night came, and with it, the cold, the bugs, the sound of animals in the distance. He shook, tried to curl under the root of the tree, but the chain was too short. He slept sitting up, jolting awake at every sound that might have them. And when morning came, he stood, ready for the car, the call, the return. But there was only wind. He waited, that day and the next. And the one after that. His water came from rain, his food from luck or nothing. His bark faded, his legs weakened, his hope thinned, but he stayed. Because loyalty is not something a dog gives lightly, but once given, it doesn't break, even when it should. And so he became part of the tree, part of the silence, part of the forgotten, until someone finally heard the echo of what was left behind. Waiting and the inner state of the dog. Time passed, but not in days, not in hours, not even in moments. For him, time passed in silence, in the weight of the chain, in the stretch of rope that defined his entire world, no bigger than the shadow of the tree that held him. He stopped barking, stopped crying, stopped standing. Standing took too much energy, and hope was heavy, too heavy to carry on an empty stomach. He lay still most days, eyes half-lidded, ears twitching at every leaf, every breeze, every ghost of a memory that sounded like them. He began to smell like the forest, not the good parts, but the dampness, the rot. The way dead leaves curl into themselves and vanish. His fur matted, tangled, pulled tight against skin that stretched too thin. He scratched until he bled. Not from fleas, not from dirt, but from something deeper, something that lived inside him now. The ache of being forgotten. The world narrowed. The birds became enemies. Their joy felt mocking. The sun too hot. The rain too loud. The ground too hard. He was tired, but he didn't let go because something inside him, something deep and quiet and old, still whispered, maybe tomorrow. He began to hallucinate, not in pictures, but in feelings. The sound of a bowl, the rhythm of a name, the phantom pressure of a hand on his head. He dreamed of running, then woke to the bite of the chain against his neck. Sometimes he forgot what it meant to be touched, but his skin remembered, and every breeze felt like a ghost brushing past him. He licked the air, for taste, for memory, or maybe just for something to do that wasn't waiting. A squirrel passed once. He didn't chase it, didn't even blink. His hunger was not in his belly anymore. It had moved to his soul, and still, he stayed, because that is what they told him to do. Not with words, but with silence. They tied him to a tree, and that chain became a command he could not disobey. Even when his muscles atrophied, even when the flies built nests in the corners of his eyes, even when his dreams stopped visiting, he stayed. A hiker passed one morning, too far to see him, close enough for him to smell. So, the scent of humans, of something clean, something warm. He lifted his head, tried to bark, only a rasp came out. More breath than sound. The hiker walked on, and Echo lowered his head again. But something had changed. He had tried. For the first time in days, or weeks, or however long the sun had been climbing and falling above him, he had tried. That night, he didn't sleep. He watched the stars. Not for guidance, not for prayer, just for proof that there was still light somewhere in this world. And then, the footsteps, soft, cautious, human. They didn't call out, didn't laugh, didn't shout. They stopped. A pause, and a voice. Oh my God. Echo didn't move, couldn't, but his eyes opened. And in them, not fear, not hope, just readiness. Because when you've waited so long in silence, even the sound of help feels like thunder. The first encounter with someone who truly sees him, it wasn't the first time someone passed by, but it was the first time someone stopped. She had been walking through the woods, camera in one hand, coffee in the other, looking for silence, for peace, for something green to remind her that life still bloomed. After heartbreak, she wasn't looking for him. She wasn't looking for anything that needed saving. But some souls call to each other, even without voices. She saw the shape first, at the base of the tree, still, too still. At first she thought it was nothing, a pile of branches, a discarded bag. But then the shape moved, just barely, just enough. Her breath caught. She took a step closer, then another, and then she saw the chain and the eyes. They didn't plead, didn't ask, didn't accuse. They just looked at her, through her, like a ghost who had been watching the living from the other side of something unspeakable. Oh my God, she whispered. He didn't move, didn't growl, didn't even lift his head, but he blinked. Slow, intentional, like a door opening, just enough to let in light. She crouched, kept her distance, didn't reach, didn't make a sound after that. She just let herself be seen by the one who had gone unseen for far too long. Echo followed her every motion with tired eyes. She saw the sores on his legs, the way his ribcage rose and fell, like it was learning how to breathe again. She wanted to cry, to scream, to run to him, but she stayed still. Because some kinds of pain cannot be rushed. They must be met with reverence. She opened her backpack slowly, pulled out half a sandwich, laid it on the ground between them, then backed away. Echo didn't move at first. Then, after 2 minutes that felt like lifetimes, he shifted, crawled, not walked, to the food, mouth trembling, jaw hesitant. He didn't devour it. He tasted it, as if trying to remember what kindness felt like, on the tongue. When he finished, he looked at her again. Still not close, still not trusting, but no longer hiding. And in that gaze, something flickered. A fragment of belief, not in people, but in possibility. She took out her phone, called someone. Her voice was quiet. "There's a dog," she said. Tied, alone, still alive. She didn't say how broken he looked. She didn't say how much she needed him to survive, too, but she thought it. And somehow, he heard it. Before she left, she knelt again. Closer this time, she whispered, "I see you." And Echo, just once, wagged his tail. A twitch, barely there, but real. That night, she came back with water, blankets, a flashlight, and hope. And Echo, for the first time in his life, didn't sleep alone. The spark in his eyes when someone finally sees him. The next morning, the light returned, soft, filtered through trees, cool enough to remind the earth that beginnings are quiet. She came early. Same jacket, same soft eyes. This time, she brought more. A bowl of warm food, a longer blanket, a new rope, but not to tie, to free. Echo was sitting upright, not because he had strength, not because he trusted, but because he remembered that someone had returned. And in a world where everything had been taken, the return of anything was a miracle. She smiled, and he blinked twice. Then he wagged his tail, not wildly, not with joy, but with acknowledgement, a spark, a flicker, a message. "I see you too." She knelt, reached slowly, showed her hands, open palms, no force, no threat, just an offering. He didn't move at first, just stared into her, through her, and she didn't look away. She let the weight of his stare land, let it settle, let it tell its story. Because when a dog like Echo looks at you, you don't just see sadness, you see memory, and memory is sacred. She spoke quietly. "Hey, brave boy!" His ear twitched. She placed the food down, a few feet closer, then sat back and waited. She didn't coax, didn't plead. She just waited. Because healing doesn't answer to impatience. It answers to presence. He moved. A shuffle, a step, another. Then he reached the food. And before eating, he looked at her. Not out of fear, but acknowledgement. Like someone saying grace before accepting what's been given. She watched every bite, not for reassurance, but because when a dog eats in front of you, after starvation, he is not just taking in food, he is letting you in. And when he finished, he lay down, closer this time. His body curved, not away from her, but toward. The spark was growing, faint, but real, like the first ember after a long, cold night. Over the next few days, the pattern repeated. She came. He waited. She sat. He approached. Until one day, she reached out very gently and placed her hand against his fur. He didn't flinch, didn't freeze. He closed his eyes, and leaned in. It was not dramatic, not loud, but something shifted. The forest felt warmer, the wind felt softer, and in his eyes, there it was, that spark, that unmistakable light that says, I am still here, I am still me, and I am ready, maybe, to be loved again, she cried. Of course she did, because to witness a soul returning is a kind of resurrection. She stayed with him until the sun bent low, then left again, with a promise in her voice. I'll be back, Echo. And this time, he believed her. He didn't bark, didn't chase. He just watched her go, with light in his eyes. The first real touch and shared emotion. Trust doesn't bloom in a moment. It grows slowly, delicately, like a flower reaching through cracked stone. It had been days since she first found him. Days of returning, of kneeling, of offering her presence without condition. And Echo, in return, had been showing pieces of himself. Small ones, tiny gestures, like crumbs left behind on a path out of the dark. But this day was different. This was the day he would let himself be touched. She approached him like always, soft, measured, grounded. She knelt by the tree, her eyes level with his. Her heart beating so loud, she was sure he could hear it. In her hand was nothing. No food, no tool, no leash, just skin and warmth
and patience.
She reached forward, and Echo did not move. He watched her, not with suspicion, but with readiness. Her fingers met his fur, and for the first time in his life, he did not brace for pain. He didn't shrink, didn't flinch, didn't prepare for the blow. He let her hand rest on the side of his neck where the chain rubbed raw, where skin met rust, where memory lived. And in that moment, something broke. Not in him, in her. Tears fell. Not loud, not desperate, but sacred. Like rain after drought, she whispered, "Oh my God, you're still here." And he closed his eyes, leaned in, breathed. It wasn't just a touch. It was permission to begin again, to let love end where fear had lived for too long. She slowly ran her fingers along his shoulder, down his side, over his back, and he stayed, still, solid, as if the earth itself had held its breath. To honor this reunion, she examined the chain, old, deeply rusted, tight. Her voice broke. "I'm going to get you out of this. I promise." And Echo, as if he understood, exhaled. That one breath was everything. Later, she brought bolt cutters, a towel, a bowl with warm water, a harness, a blanket that smelled like a home. She knelt again, touched the chain. He didn't panic. He didn't run. He watched. And when the chain snapped, he didn't bolt. He stayed. She wrapped the towel around him, lifted the harness gently under his belly, walked him slowly to the car, and he followed. One step, then another. Weak, but willing. Inside, he lay on the blanket, eyes wide, then soft. She whispered, "You're free." And he rested his head on the edge of the seat, closed his eyes, and let go of the waiting, of the wound, of the weight. In her rearview mirror, she saw him sleeping, and in her heart, she felt something she hadn't in years. Peace. She drove, with one hand on the wheel, and one hand resting on the seat beside him, fingers slightly outstretched. And halfway home, he reached forward with his paw and touched her hand. Just once, And in that one touch was a universe of all the things he couldn't say, but now could show. A new beginning. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives on quiet paws, with slow tail wags and deep healing sighs. Echo stepped into the house, hesitantly, his body still thin, still worn, still wired for fear. But his eyes had changed. They scanned the room, not for exits, but for warmth. She walked ahead of him, didn't look back, didn't coax. She let him come. Because she knew, sometimes the bravest thing is walking toward safety on your own terms. The floor was soft. The corners held light. The air didn't smell like rust or dirt or regret. It smelled like clean, like plants on a windowsill, like second chances. There was a bed by the fireplace. It wasn't brand new, but it was his. She showed it to him without words. He approached, sniffed, circled once. Then he lay down for the first time, not because he was exhausted, but because he was allowed to rest. Days passed, then weeks. Echo learned that meals came without asking, that gentle hands didn't vanish, that not every sudden sound meant danger. He learned the rhythm of her day, the way she moved through morning light, the way she spoke softly to plants, to him, to herself. He stopped flinching, started stretching, started wagging his tail, at first in sleep. Then, while awake, one morning, he barked, just once, to greet her, and she cried. She took him to the groomer, to us. When we first saw him, we didn't recognize what we were looking at. The matted fur was gone. The rust from the chain had been washed away. The stiffness in his limbs had softened. But more than that, his eyes were full. Not just of life, but of light. In the salon, he stood calmly, let us touch him, brush him, lift his paws. He even licked my wrist. And in that moment, we knew he was home. In his body, in his heart, in her arms. We asked what she called him now. She smiled. Still Echo, she said. But now it means something else. He no longer echoes pain. He echoes hope. He echoes the reminder that no matter how deep the silence, someone, somewhere, might still be listening. He runs now, fast, free, not like a dog escaping, but like a soul returning to where it belongs. Sometimes, she catches him staring out the window, not in longing, but in awe, because even he can't believe he made it. And every night, before bed, she kneels beside him, touches his ear, and whispers, "You are safe. You are seen. You are so, so loved." And every night, he rests his head against her, not to hold on, but to let go. Thank you for being here, for listening, for witnessing. I'm a groomer, a rescuer, and the voice behind Diary of Abandoned Souls. Every story we share here comes from the real dogs we've met. Dogs like Echo, who survived not because they were rescued, but because they refuse to stop waiting for someone to care. In the description, you'll find a link to our grooming transformation channel. There you can see dogs like Echo blossom, from fear to trust, from mats to miracles. And if this story touched you, please subscribe to this channel, because the more voices we have, the louder our love becomes. And to every Echo out there, still tied to silence, still waiting beneath trees of forgetfulness, may someone be walking toward you now, and may they kneel gently and whisper, "I see you."